Alright, it is time for the Hungarian Grand Prix observations. It was a frigid weekend. We got some unexpected outcomes. And we got some lessons in elite car control, among many others. quite an interesting and fun weekend and race that we were served up. Perhaps less so pending your allegiances, but anyway, let's get into it. One, I suppose the formation lab needs to be looked at, I suppose. It's bad optics for me that it's really bad optics for me that, George Russell on pole is going through turn 7 while the back of the grid hasn't even pulled away. I mean, back 10 cars haven't even pulled away from the grid yet. And, it's anyone's guess what exactly they'll do about that. But on some level, the drivers do just have to be a little bit more responsible. But anyway, formation lab. The formation lab now is a very different beast to what it used to be, in regards to what type of warming up procedure these cars actually require nowadays. But anyway, I do believe that needs to be looked at. Someone smarter than me will get on the case. I'm not sure there's some sort of delta that can be applied or anything of the sort, but anyway, something has to be done there. I would assume the Grand Prix Drivers Association would just get together and shake hands to just drive a little bit more responsibly on the formation lap. Maybe that will come to a head, at Spa, when this month is over, at Spa. Maybe it will come to a head there, and and some wild optics will occur with the length of the circuit. But anyway, alright, so this Grand Prix turned out to be all about tyre strategy, and I may or may not have some sort of graphic ready. I'm hoping someone professional produces one, but nothing seems to be happening just yet. But anyway, it was all about tyre strats, this Grand Prix. You didn't have to be that smart to know what exactly was the right tyre to pick for each moment. But that aside, even qualifying was about tyre strats in terms of how you warmed up the tyres and even how your car treated the tyres. So the likes of Ferrari and Red Bull, who have cars that handle so well that they don't stress the tyres all that much, and the car doesn't slide, doesn't generate all that much slide on the tyres all that much, they were having difficulty warming up their tyres, and we thought it was going to be a rainy qualifying, but it was a dry qualifying, but a cold qualifying. Likewise, a cold race, it almost rained, right? One of those Grand Prix where it almost rained. But I suppose this one was more compelling on account of there was actually drizzle in the air, but we'll get to all of that. But yes, it was all about tyre strategy, the whole weekend. Not necessarily on Friday. Friday was just data gathering, very important data gathering, and I suppose essential data gathering considering the results, considering the final results of this Grand Prix. But yeah, one could argue Ferrari put themselves in a difficult position by starting on the mediums. Of course, we'll get to Ferrari. They didn't even run their strategy correctly. But that aside, on account of the conditions, right, it was a very difficult race day for teams to actually decide on which tires to run. Now, the logic that the hard tire would turn on for teams with bad cars, it perhaps makes sense, but it's really relative, and your car has to be particularly bad to actually turn that tire on. And that only applies to really one or two teams on the grid, and they didn't have a good day running the hards anyway. But that aside, if we can see it on TV, one should assume that these highly paid strategists on the pit wall and in the garages would know better. But anyway, So really the race is all about which tires everyone started on, because you had to get the soft out of the way at some point, and well, it wasn't exactly profitable to run it at the end on every car, right? On account of, well, they're used tires, and the properties of used tires, they, how do I say that? It's like they've been cured, right? You cure meat or something. You cure the tire by having it be used. Can have 3 laps on it or what have you, 4 laps, and then the tire life is quote unquote 20 laps, and it would be cut down to 16, or maybe with lower fuel in the car, you can get 18 laps out of the tire, whatever it is, okay? And on account of this, well, on account of the property of the tires changing, because everyone was running used tires, only Perez had new soft tires, I believe. By the time, yeah, for the actual Grand Prix, I believe only Perez had a new set of soft tires. But that aside, by the time the Grand Prix comes, you have to, one, find a good time to run the soft tires, and two, running the soft tire is no guarantee that you're actually going to be quicker than cars that are on the medium. And the hard is just out of the question. I don't know what Ferrari are thinking there. But anyway, this is a Grand Prix very much shaped by the conditions and tire choice, particularly at the start of the Grand Prix. Alright, so George Russell put it on pole. I wonder what the betting odds on that would have been. Someone must have made a good chunk of change, undoubtedly. But yes, George Russell, he did put it on pole. A Mercedes program is starting to peak. Yeah, I do expect them to find a win somewhere between Spa and Suzuka. They should win somewhere there. Maybe at Spa and Suzuka, but we'll see what exactly the intelligentsia has in mind. But gorgeous Russell, he put it on pole. A very unlikely pole. He's gotten the pole on account of it being a cold qualifying afternoon, and the Mercedes actually sliding around. The Ferrari's not sliding around as much, or it's not getting as much value out of sliding around on account of the tire slip just wearing out the tire instead of actually generating heat. But yeah, George, he's put it on pole. He hasn't set a faster sector anyway. So it's just been a very good lap, a very solid lap. A bit like a wet qualifying session, but not exactly wet anyway. And this has come right off the back of me saying don't expect this Mercedes to out-qualify either of the Ferrari or the Red Bull. And really, I still stick by that. It's probably a bad bet to make up. Well, at least you got just some chump change lying around. But anyway, I am not giving out betting advice or financial advice or what have you. But I wouldn't consider it a good bet to bet on a Mercedes pole going forwards, unless there are some interesting conditions being thrown up by the weekend. Some folks wonder if Sir Lewis Hamilton perhaps could have gotten pole. Maybe. Who knows? Who knows at this point? Maybe. Probably. But it doesn't really matter one way or the other, because the points are counted on Sunday anyway. I mean, the stats are great. Some interesting stats got broken this weekend, but the stats are great. But there's really only one stat that matters, right? How many world championships you get, because things like the points will always change. They perhaps add more, you know, perhaps we solve teleportation or something, and then they add, I don't know, they have a 50 Grand Prix. They have a 50 Grand Prix weekend, they have a 50 Grand Prix calendar or something. So, I mean, even things like pole positions or wins or what have you, they're not really going to matter in the very long run of things. But how many world championships you actually get, that's going to always matter. So, So I don't know. I guess for the fans, I guess people would want to see Sir Lewis Hamilton get another pole and whatever. Georgie's gotten the pole. The Mercedes car is cooking well. I suppose you could say. I'm gonna be very interested to see how they do at Spa. But anyway, getting on to Sunday, George Russell, he's made a very good getaway from the start. Likewise, Sir Lewis Hamilton. If Mercedes maintain whatever knowledge, whatever sort of procedure they've gotten for their starts, when their car is good next season, or perhaps season after, who knows really. It's anyone's guess what type of mad starts we'll see. But otherwise, George, he's made a very good start. Likewise, Sir Lewis Hamilton. And getting into the Grand Prix, there's the VSC that has flown immediately for some debris. George Russell, he's figured something out with the virtual safety car restarts. I'll be very interested to see if he gets policed. I'll be very interested to see if the FIA strike this move from the repertoire, say, oh, you're not allowed to do that. Likewise, I'll be interested to see if other drivers are actually, well, I suppose both brave and smart enough to actually execute it. But otherwise, George has indeed figured something out. I suppose if he does it again at Spa, the FIA might have a look at it, because it's a hat trick at that point. They'll say, okay, wait, he can do it consistently. What is he actually doing? And should we actually police it? I expect that to be a topic at some point. But otherwise, getting into the race, George has gotten very stern in terms of defending against Leclerc. Very stern, very good driving from the pair of them, I must say. Leclerc pays him back somewhere around lap 50. He definitely pays him back with his own stern defense on his quote-unquote concrete tires. But yeah, could George have won the race? No, I don't think so. Could Lewis Hamilton have won the race? No, I don't think so. But speaking of Sir Lewis Hamilton, that 57 came alive. He got into the soft tires. Which point did he get onto the soft tires? He got into the soft tires around lap 51. Suppose that would be the end of lap 51, so starting lap 52. So he baked them in slowly and then proceeded to, well, run qualifying laps, essentially. Would he have caught Maximilian Verstappen? No, I don't believe so. The virtual safety car is perhaps a banker, if you want to treat it that way, by the intelligentsias, perhaps a banker by the MK handlers. But anyway, neither here nor there, because I don't believe he was gonna catch Verstappen anyway. But yes, the Mercedes is actually looking like a very good race car. Qualifying, I suppose, will depend on whatever ails Ferrari and Red Bull actually have. And this is worth noting, actually. The Mercedes duo were racing each other, regardless of whatever their current strategies were at the end of the Grand Prix. They were racing each other. Alright, I'm going to compare and contrast that with Red Bull later on. Now, keep that in mind that this is what happens in an equal opportunity team. It's not about whatever strategy you're on, come time to, unless there's an actual team play being made to get a win. And mind you, if that team play doesn't actually work to get the win, they revert the drivers to whatever position they were in before. But in equal opportunity teams, forget about your strategy. Remember Spain? Remember Spain. Alright, we can compare and contrast with Spain. That one should be very clear in the memory. We can compare and contrast with that. But remember Spain, where Perez got shuffled out of the way for, well, Verstappen, who had a quote-unquote faulty car. You know, there's a glitch going on his car. His DRS is not even working properly, he got shuffled out the way over there, regardless of whatever tyre strategy he was on, in order to facilitate Verstappen's tyre strategy. That does not happen at Mercedes, because at that point you're going for the result, and each driver is open to get whichever result they so want, or quite frankly, whichever result they can get. They're open to do that. And mind you, George Russell, he's on pretty old tyres by the time they're racing each other. Right, he pitted, at the end of lap 39, so that would be going into lap 40. And he picked up mediums at the time. So it's inevitable. So Lewis Hamilton is going to overtake George Russell. Boom, he overtakes him. A cut to Toto Wolff. He's got a wry grin on his face. I wonder why he's got such a wry grin on his face. But anyway, they cut to Toto. I suppose if I were to get meta with it, Toto is probably smiling because gorgeous Russell is going to have good data to look at. But anyway, so Lewis Hamilton's broken an interesting record he's broken an interesting record at the Hungarian Grand Prix. He's broken Bill Vukovic's record for the most laps led at a single venue. It's notable, right? This is a really notable record because Vukovic set his record when the Indy 500 was still on the F1 calendar, or whatever Formula 1 was called back then. I forget what it was called, but anyway, whatever it might have been called back then. But you understand, it's the Indy 500, they're doing 200 laps over there. Some guy can probably lead 150 laps just having a good car for a Grand Prix over there. If you have a good car for a few Grand Prix, you'll probably get 400, 500 laps led. That's Lewis Hamilton, you just broke that record at Hungary for laps led as single. It's such a crazy stat when you actually just consider it. And how fitting, because Sir Lewis Hamilton, he actually loves the Hungaroring. It's like a go-kart circuit to him. But anyway, last thing worth noting about Mercedes, aside from a double podium and with whatever pace they showed over the weekend, George, he's a little despondent on the radio after finishing P3. I think he wanted P2, and I think he probably believes he could have gotten the win. I don't believe either of the Mercedes could have gotten the win. Verstappen probably had some afterburners in there to turn on if so needed. But really, I don't believe either of them were on for a win. But yeah, Russell's a little despondent on radio afterwards. You can hear it. Do I think he has reason to be despondent? No. I mean, he's run a pretty good tyre strategy, and boom, you've gotten a double podium. There's not really much to be upset about. If the win is not on, it doesn't really matter, but anyway. Alright, it is correct to put Red Bull here. Verstappen, he's won the Grand Prix. It's a very unlikely outcome. This is the title of it's a very unlikely outcome that he's actually gotten the win here, which actually speaks volumes to how incompetent Ferrari have been on the day. But anyway, let me not explode on that right now. Let me keep that energy just tucked away for just a bit. But yeah, Verstappen, all things aside, he's actually had to drive a very good race to get the win here. I suppose there may or may not be memes about the spin. It's neither here nor there. There's other very interesting talking points around Red Bull anyway. So, I mean, aside from just the overtaking in general being a pretty, I don't want to say easy to execute, but well, executable. I suppose is good enough. People are actually able to execute overtakes in these cars, in this formula. So, well, it was, on some level, it was inevitable that Verstappen was going to drive the car up into a podium challenging position. I expected him to challenge for a podium, at best second, but on account of Ferrari's gross incompetence, he's gotten the win. But that aside, Perez has performed some pretty epic rearguard duty, and let's talk about it, right? So Perez, he got moved out of Verstappen's way on lap 40. Verstappen, he had just pit for tyres at the end of lap 38. So he's running his new mediums because Red Bull, in current guise, is not an equal opportunity team. I'm pretty sure if they had Danny Rick or Vettel or I don't think Sainz would be able to actually force equal opportunity out of Red Bull. But yeah, if they had one of Danny Rick or Seb over there, I suppose they would have to run the team in equal opportunity mode, with Verstappen there as well, I'm assuming. But as is, it's not an equal opportunity team. So Perez, he got moved out of Verstappen's way on lap 40. It's notable because he's being pit on lap 42. If he's about to pit, he's probably supposed to be putting in hot laps. He's supposed to be putting in fast laps. These are the laps that actually count. But on account of him actually performing great guard duty for the tip of the spear, Maximilian Verstappen, he's not exactly being prioritized in that way. So Leclerc gets overtaken by Verstappen on lap 41. After that, Verstappen spins. Same lap, or lap 42, I believe, but he spins. Perez performs some epic rear guard duty. And Crafty commentates as though George Russell is Sir Lewis Hamilton. I suppose he got confused on account of the T-bar. He says he uses the T-bar to identify which car is which, and he still can't get over the fact that Sir Lewis Hamilton is driving the number 2. But anyway, it's very good technique from Verstappen to complete the 360 spin, by the way. Very good technique. Right, we got some pretty great car control clips this whole Grand Prix. I'm going to talk about those later. But yeah, all that bluster about Perez even being a contender, I mean, it's not even a feature right now. I suppose there is some comfort to take at present with with the idea that Perez is running the quote-unquote legal floor and Maximilian is running the illegal flexing floor. I suppose there is some comfort to take with that before Spa actually happens. But as soon as Spa actually happens, the film is going to be in, and it's gonna be the same until we probably get to Mexico. I expect Perez to peak again somewhere around Mexico. 2 Grand Prix either side of Mexico, but we'll see what happens. He's not really keeping himself in contention until that point anyway. And we have to go Netherlands, but Netherlands will be an interesting event. Netherlands will be its own event, I suppose. But all that aside, Red Bull have gotten a win. How unlikely. Still can't actually believe Maximilian Verstappen has got this. Still can't believe it. Can't believe it. Like, come on now, Ferrari. You gotta be cloud. Well, I'll get to Ferrari. But yeah, it's just such an unlikely win for Verstappen over here. The Verstappen parade is in full effect. This is great film if you're a Verstappen. This is great film, honestly. If you're a Verstappen fan and this whole fight back from 10th place or whatever you ended up starting, was it 11th or 10th? I believe it was 10th. But what a fight back! Look at the fight back from P10. Oh my goodness. He's even got clutch problems that have spun the car out, and he's recovered it. Great film. He's overtaking everyone out. Great film. But all that aside, from where I'm sitting, there's a very interesting lack of replacement parts for Red Bull. Despite all these reliability gremlins throughout the season, it's very, 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 very few, if any, replacements. Everything is repairable. Everything is repairable. Isn't that something? He's got an issue that has taken the car completely out of qualifying. Can't even drive the car. Well, can drive the car, I suppose. Over exaggerating there. But man, the car can't even lap. And whatever the problem is, don't worry, you just gotta wrench the screw over here. Don't worry, this hose just needed tightening. Like, come on now, little clutch problem. Come on now, we're smarter than this, but I digress. I digress. These things will catch up with Maximilian at some point. So it's alright. whatever they so let happen next season or the season after, when they eventually have to run a legitimate season. Whatever so happens. There will be checks for all of these. You gotta pay these checks back at some point. But anyway, very interesting lack of replacements. I'll never have to replace anything. I've been watching that all season. It's very interesting. But anyway. Verstappen and Sir Lewis Hamilton very jovial in the cool-down room after Sir Lewis has seen Charles Leclerc on the hards. Can't believe it. Of course, Sir Lewis hasn't actually encountered Charles on the circuit, such as the way Grand Prix actually play out sometimes. He hasn't actually encountered Charles on the circuit, so he hasn't gotten to see. I'm like, oh, he's on hards? Is he serious? Ferrari serious? Hasn't gotten to do it. So he couldn't believe it. Sir Lewis Hamilton and the cool down. Verstappen, likewise, he turns to him like, can you believe? They put him on hards. What are they thinking? But it's just a funny moment to see between these two, despite all things. Anyway, they're jovial with each other. I don't really give much of a rip about it. These guys are all in the game anyway. They're all in the craft. But I digress. Perez has been anonymous, as far as I'm concerned. It's very good for him that the summer break has come along. It's very good for him. Quite frankly, because he was well out of form, and he needs to go take some rest somewhere, get a little less jaded, and get back in the car and see exactly what he can do. The floor idea, I'm not buying the floor idea. I'm not buying it just yet. We'll have to see what happens from Spa going onwards, but I'm not buying it just yet. I just think Perez he's now off form. When he was in form, he was sabotaged, I suppose. The engine goes by. His engine will fail. Perez's engine. Verstappen's, it will. Oh, you can just turn off a sensor. Don't worry. Fail 20. And you'll get to run the car like normal. But anyway, I'm saying that, but Perez had his failed 20 at Miami. It's been anonymous. Perez for his last 4 Grand Prix, the stretch of the season has been completely anonymous. A lot of people are expecting him to come back in good form for Spa going forwards. I'm expecting him to peak in form around Mexico. Said this already. If that doesn't happen, then it's anyone's guess what actually will happen. I still expect Perez to be getting a win at Mexico, because in my mind, Red Bull have definitely sabotaged him at Monaco, Canada. I'm saying they someone who's coming here for the first time around. I'm saying they've sabotaged him at Monaco and he's gotten the win post Monaco. Because I don't know how. You see, this is something that drivers actually need to learn. Take notes from Kimi Räikkönen and Sir Lewis Hamilton. If you're gonna be letting yourself get a little sozzed up and you're partying or what have you, have an entourage of trusted man them around who are gonna pull you the fuck out of situations, homie. Have a group of trusted men, because you can't trust the team. They're not actually for you. You're just you're quite literally just an asset to them. You're just making them money for now. That's all it really is. In terms of whatever merchandise you actually move, you're just making them money, right? If you are not actually the tip of the spear, then the team are not going to protect you when you do a madness. They're not going to protect you when you get yourself in a sticky situation. Matter of fact, they might be the ones who actually put you in a sticky situation, which is why I say Perez has been sabotaged at Monaco. It's ridiculous to me. Suppose this is some Red Bull after party from the Monaco. It's ridiculous to me that the whole team there, and none of them have said, okay, let me get Perez out of this situation. It's ridiculous to me. It's definitely been set up. Marco's told everyone what the script is, and they've run it. But anyway, you got sabotage Monaco, sabotage Canada, and wherever else you so want to say, I suppose. But at this point of the season, he's just anonymous. I suppose maybe in his own head, he's probably cottoned on that, man. These guys here at Red Bull, they're not actually they're not actually for me. I'm sure. I mean, he's the one who's actually living it. I'm seeing it on TV. Newey is never going to this guy. Like, Newey never wants to know what the hell Perez thinks about the car or anything. Never wants to know, like, you know, doing a professional thing, like, okay, let me hear what Perez has to say when he comes to me. But Newey is not going to him. He always goes to Maximilian. So at some point, it's gonna affect Perez. He's now in this anonymous phase of the season. He'll bounce back for Mexico. Before that, I'm not actually putting money on anything. I don't put money on anything anyway. But but I'm not actually putting any stock in Perez being good at Spa, or well, whatever comes after Spa. I'm not actually putting stock in that. Maybe he will be good at Spa, and then he'll be really bad at the Dutch Grand Prix, but we'll see what happens. Otherwise, very unlikely win for Verstappen. Powerful gear to display this season, by the way. Ooh, what a powerful gear. Just fish out a win from the most unlikely position. You know, the most likely competitors just goof around, they go full clown mode. And the next most likely are just not actually fast enough in the final tally. But anyway, at least there's good form. Oh boy. So I guess the likelihood is high of people maybe skipping to this part of the video. So I suppose Ferrari haven't gotten the pole in Hungary because their car probably wasn't going to get pole. I suppose maybe the Mercedes was going to get pole in the uncanny conditions we were given, but they weren't going to get pole on account of their car being too good and not actually generating slip in the tire, ergo it can't generate heat. But anyway, I'm just mentioning this again on account of expecting people to skip to this, and that kind of contextualizes the whole weekend for Ferrari. They couldn't really get the softs to turn on because, well, if the drivers start leaning on the tire to try and generate heat, then the tire starts to actually wear. They couldn't put the hards on because, well, they're the concrete tires as described by Brundle on commentary, and they couldn't put, and the mediums, I'm saying they couldn't put the mediums on, Jesus Christ. And the mediums were good because the drivers could actually lean on the tire, and the tire could actually handle some aggressive tire slip and not actually wear out while generating good heat at the same time. Now they've chosen to start on the mediums, Ferrari, on both the cars. Is it a problem? No. They've simply not run their strategy correctly. This was a criticism in Austria on account of they didn't actually have to give up the lead in Austria, and they just made their driver do a lot more work than was probably necessary. But I guess Red Bull, this is how Red Bull play the game, right? But here in Hungary, Ferrari are effectively racing themselves. if we take relative car performance into account, they're effectively racing themselves, and they've somehow fluffed their strategy, trying to cover off cars that they're not actually racing. And it's all a bit bizarre to me. I'm not quite sure where to begin in terms of their race. Yes, there's some interesting talking points about For instance, Leclerc is learning how to use a second driver, at least in my opinion, because he didn't ask the pit wall to move Sainz out of the way. He just specifically asked him to make him a lap faster. Right, that was all that was necessarily needed. It's not like they're racing against the Red Bull. Just okay, make him lap a bit faster. We're gonna pull up to this to this Mercedes. I'm gonna coast behind him, keeping my tires working my tires a little less in the corners and making up the time with DRS, and I'm just gonna let him drag me along. Alright, so there's some interesting talking points in that regard for Ferrari, but I mean it goes downhill pretty fast from there. It may or may not be forgotten in post very quickly, but Sainz ignored the first pit call to box on the same lap that George Russell boxed. George Russell, by the way, started on softs, right? The Ferrari started on mediums. It's just bizarre that Ferrari were even considering boxing. If George Russell didn't pit, were they going to actually pull Sainz in? Were they actually going to do that? Because if they were actually going to do that, that also wasn't the right play. That was never the right play. And they pit him a lap later. Anyway. And they pit him a lap later to cover off George Russell. Why do Ferrari have to cover off a Mercedes? This is so bizarre to me. Especially when they're on the medium tire. And they actually needed to run that medium as long as they could go. Likewise, the second set of mediums they needed to run as long as they could go. They did the first step right with Leclerc. They ran those mediums, I would suppose, as long as they could go. Didn't do that with Sainz. But then after that, there's some interesting optics. Right, Ferrari have already fumbled the ball with Sainz. Sainz is never going to win the Grand Prix. As soon as they put him on lap 17, right? He's never going to win the Grand Prix. But Leclerc could still win it at this point. But some interesting optics crop up from here. One, Leclerc is very trusting of Russell's talent for his overtake. Very trusting, as noted by Martin Brundle. I wonder how many drivers you could actually do that move on the grid. I would say 3. Maybe 4 drivers, but it's maybe a little testy on that one. But you could only do that move on, I suppose, if you are Charles Leclerc, on 3 drivers that are on the grid right now. And one of them is George Russell. You can probably guess the other 2. It would be 4 drivers that he could do that move on, but one of them retired. I'll talk about Kimi in another video. But yeah, Leclerc is very trusting of George's ability behind the wheel there, considering he closed the angle of the corner down the way he did. George could have snatched the brake. He's braking on the dirty side of the track. As soon as Charles cuts across him, his aero could force him to lock up. But a lot of things could happen there. So for Charles to just turn in the way he did, I suppose he's raced with George Russell a lot through the junior formula, so he's very aware of just exactly how good George Russell is. But otherwise, that was a very risky move by Charles. You don't actually do that on most of the grid. I suppose he is aware of who he's racing against, and he's not actually going to do that against other drivers. But who knows? Charles will know. But anyway, it was good film, regardless. And he even had the helmet cam for the day, so it was good film. But then we get into the true bizarrities of Ferrari's Grand Prix. They put Leclerc on the hards, and well, one, it had already been demonstrated by Alpine the hards were just not going to work, and 2, they were trying to cover off a Verstappen pit stop for no reason. They could have just ran these mediums another 2, maybe 3 laps, maybe try and do what Sir Lewis Hamilton did and run them for 30 laps and then go on to the softs. But oh my days, they put Charles Leclerc on the hard compound tires, and it's a bizarrity to me. Now, I don't want to lean on this MK Ultra thing. I really don't want to, because, you know, even the pit wall RMK assets, right? The driver will have a handler, and and Benotto, even Benotto will have a handler, right? And the strategist and what have you. And you know, I don't want to lean on this thing, but it's so bizarre what's happening at Ferrari. I don't know what else one could explain. Are they just that incompetent? That I suppose it's fun to just say, oh, look how incompetent Ferrari are. It's clown world over there. I suppose it's very funny to do that. They've got a theme park, right? They've got to have like jesters that roam the theme park. I suppose they hired one of their men to be on the damn pit wall. But anyway, god damn. I suppose we could say the hards broke their Grand Prix. I mean, yes. But also no, I suppose Leclerc having to make a second stop would break his Grand Prix. But them actually not running proper strategy on account of what the day was producing. Mercedes have learned their lessons from running shoddy strategy. From when they ran shoddy strategy. They've learned their lessons. That they actually trusted the driver to, well, you say the tires can keep going, you keep going. And maybe there's not that much back and forth on between the Ferrari cars and the Ferrari pit wall. Who knows? They'll know, I suppose. But still, a very bizarre choice to put them on the hards. Well, to put Leclerc on hards. Very bizarre choice. Very bizarre choice. The timings of their pit stops as well. It's kind of like they're not actually. It's kind of like Ferrari don't actually realize that they've got the fastest car, and they've probably got one of the best wear rates as far as tire wear goes on the grid. And it's like Ferrari don't actually realize it. They're like, oh, they pit, it must mean we have to pit soon. We're pitting now. Like, they're running it kind of dim-wittedly, and they're so incompetent that it's actually hard to believe that, I don't know, it's a paid strategist that's doing this. It's hard to believe that it's a legitimate professional paid F1 strategist who's making these decisions. If Ferrari are actually trying to compete, then they probably sack Benotto or something. Something has to happen in that regard, because this is, well, it's not bad. It's not even bad optics. It's just yeah, it's just incompetent. If I say it's bad optics, I'm giving Ferrari some sort of excuse. No, there's just gross incompetence going on at Ferrari. I mean, the toilet break for Benotto is doing the rounds, I suppose, but it wasn't going to change anything. The race was already over at that point for Ferrari. They had already fucked it up. They fucked up Sainz by pitting him so early. Oh, they're on mediums. I don't know why they have to pit that early. So they screwed up there, and then Leclerc screwed up, we know. Now, it should be noted the Ferrari was not particularly quick on the softs either. So would it have actually changed anything? I don't particularly think so. What would have changed something was just having a more suitable tire for the conditions, the softs, and actually running the medium tires as long as they would go. That would have changed things. But they didn't even run the mediums as long as they would go, so they had already lost the Grand Prix there. And someone's going to say, oh, what, Red Bull didn't do. Well, Verstappen, he started on the softs. That's the difference here. Right, so Lewis Hamilton, he had to finish on the softs because he started on the mediums. And if you were going to do that, you actually had to run the mediums as long as they could go. Ferrari didn't do that because they're trying to cover off. Oh, we got to cover off George Russell. Ooh, we got to cover off Max Verstappen. Forget about that. Forget about it. What are you doing? You literally hold like 5 cars ahead of anyone who's important by the end of the first lap. And, well, the gaps developed from there, and rather than actually bank on the performance of the car and the ability of the drivers, Ferrari try to cover off people who are not even like their competitors. Why are Ferrari trying to cover off Mercedes? I can't get this out of my head. Why are Ferrari trying to cover off George Russell pitting off of softs? Why are they trying to cover that off? Why? Does anyone have an answer? I don't have an answer. I do not have an answer. All I have is either they're grossly incompetent or they're just self-sabotaging because, well, we need to see a Verstappen parade this season so that he has a convincing championship. I mean, this doesn't really make it convincing, but anyway. But I suppose we can just hark back to, it's a learning season, it's a learning season, guys. It's a learning season, don't worry. They're going to learn all the hard lessons this season, and Ferrari are going to come back punching next season or 2024. And Leclerc, he'll get his championship, and everyone will get to shine. And he'll be racing against Sir Lewis Hamilton as well. Ooh. But anyway, this was just like, yeah, this was a very ugly race for Ferrari. If they're serious about competing, then Binotto has to be sacked by the end of the season. I don't know. If he's that valuable to the engine department, then you take him off of team principal duties. He can't be team principal. He goes back to the engine department and and he doesn't see the pit wall, quite frankly. He can see the garage, but not the pit wall. Because that's such a screwy situation from Ferrari. If they're not serious about actually winning, or I don't know, they're running some sort of some sort of MK Ultra scheme, quite frankly, then nothing else really makes sense to explain what I've seen here in Hungary. Thankfully, it's only live once, right? So most people don't actually record the thing and watch it back multiple times. I'll be watching this race back a few times. This was Stranger Things Ferrari edition, I tell you that. Anyway, it's a learning season. Wow, the meme of the season for me. Anyway, I'm not gonna print that one just yet. I'm not gonna print that one just yet. But geez. All right. So at Alpine, we got the film on this. Ocon, should I get the film? Anyway, Ocon has made very strong defense on Alonso at the start. Listen, yeah, that one was definitely over the line. That was Schumacher versus Barrichello when they were in a Williams and a Mercedes. I tell you what, that was over the line, that one. That one was over the line. Alonso was very right to be fuming about that one. Very correct. And quite frankly, I don't know how Renault are allowing that to happen, but anyway, that's a bit borderline. If that's not Alonso in the car, they're probably crashing right there, the Alpines. I tell you what, that was wild from Ocon. Go have a look back at the start of yourself. That was wild from Ocon. But anyway, but all that aside, they got through alright because, well, Alonso's doing a madness. And Otmar's been stitched up by the commentary. They quoted him saying he'll talk to them when one of their cars is on the podium. Can you believe that? After he put them on the hards. Oh my goodness. They stitched him up right there. And it was when Alonso was coming out on the hards. When did Alonso pit for these hard tires? Alonso pit for the hard tires on 21. Ocon pit 2 laps later on lap 23. Well, at the end of lap 21, I should say. And Otmar got stitched up. I couldn't believe it. Well, I mean, definitely, it's hilarious to see in post watching that back. Oh, but he got stitched up hard. And and you know, it doesn't help that, well, the Alpines are tripping each other up, getting in each other's way, and what have you. This is gonna happen with Ocon, whichever teammate he has. By the way, you know, he done this with Perez. He's doing this with Alonso. Was he doing it with Ricardo? I don't think they were ever that close to each other. Actually, he was doing it with Ricardo as well. Anyway, Ocon, he's got a history of this, so so it's very interesting. Yeah, at the time of recording this, the news is out. Alonso is no longer at Alpine for 2023, and Piastri has also opted out of the Alpine seat. There's a video coming on that, you know, a standalone video that I'll make on that. But yeah, that's because of Ocon. Why? Because look at how Ocon has raced all his teammates. It's not just he's racing Alonso like this. All his teammates. And only because Alonso is being such a freak behind the wheel, 40 plus years old, has it not ended in tears any time they've actually squabbled. And again, it's a very strong defense by Ocon on Alonso on lap 24 as Ocon is exiting the pit. A very strong defense again. And is it over the line? No. But it's a bit of a foolish defense because now Ricardo has sprung past both of them. Now it's not mattered in the final tally, all things considered, but if I'm playing, what's this, Motorsports Manager, and my driver's doing this with his teammate, oh, I'm getting rid of him. Now that's not what's happening, but you know, there are repercussions for banking on foolishness, and we'll get to all of that. But Alpine, they lost the race. They lost their potential podium. I'm not talking about podiums here, mad. I don't think they were ever going to get one. But they lost their quote-unquote potential podium when they threw on the hards. The hards were just dead. And it's mad that Ferrari sampled the hards after that. Anyway. Alright, some notes from the commentary team. Of course, the new cars are very good for racing, whatever quote-unquote racing is, right? Now, I've said in previous videos, when overtaking is easier, anytime that the fast cars are down the pecking order, Verstappen starting 10th or what have you, they're gonna fly past the field in pretty short order. And they're able to do that because overtaking is pretty easy in these cars. I'm saying pretty easy because, well, I'm looking relative to where F1 has been before. And it's even pretty easy, even relative to last season's cars. And last season's cars were really great for overtaking. And you know, the brand of racing, I suppose, well, the optics, the spectacle, I suppose, of the racing is definitely miles better than the 2014 cars, than those 2014 to 2016 spec cars. Miles better than those ones. At least the spectacle of the racing. So, you know, all around, whatever quote unquote racing, you know, good racing means, these cars deliver on that. Other people might have questions about legality issues, but anyway. Another note from commentary that came during the race. If commentary knows, I don't know how a team like Ferrari, don't know. But anyway, Ted said, long before any pit stops happened, I didn't note the exact lap, but long before any pit stops happened, Ted noted that the hard tyres were being described as rubbish by the teams. I believe even before the Grand Prix started, he was saying that. So, so how exactly teams have made the decisions they've made is anyone's guess. Brundle, because he is real-time color commentator for the Grand Prix. He actually does quite a good job of it, but anyway. He described them as concrete tires once the Ferrari wasn't able to turn them on, because I mean it's decided at that point the good car can't turn them on, the bad car can't turn them on. Those tires are too hard for the ambient conditions of the day, and you're just not going to get them to switch on. So they are effectively concrete for the day. You're never gonna get the rubber of the tire to be pliable. But I digress. I digress. They were concrete, and Brundle can pick that out from the commentary box in real time. Ted can ask the teams, Saturday Eve or Sunday morning, what do you think of the hard tires? But oh no, some very particular teams just have to know better than everyone's best knowledge. But I digress. Alright, this was a good race for film, and we can probably throw in a fun side topic here. What do F1 drivers get paid to do? Because we got a lot of examples of it at this Grand Prix. Then it really started, well, aside from the start, every single start of a Grand Prix, aside from that, and what has been discussed in some prior videos, from lap 6 basically, Alonso has a really wicked car control moment, and that kind of demonstrates right away what F1 drivers are being paid to do. The job is to drive the car at the limit of its grip at all times. And if you go over that grip, well, you don't stop the car. You just drive to the new limit of grip and recover the car as best as possible. And there was really great onboard footage on lap 10 of some brake and throttle balance footwork from Sir Lewis Hamilton. Great onboard footage. The Hungaroring is a different circuit to Austria, so the drivers themselves will keep some throttle in the car when they actually do brake, just to help with actually rotating the car. And well, we got some cream footage, quite frankly, of that going on. And likewise on the very same onboard, because Lando Norris was ahead of Sir Lewis Hamilton at the time, look at the attitude of Norris's car and where the car is going on the circuit. Really look at where he's putting the car on the circuit, because he's he's driving the car as fast as it will go, just to race with Sir Lewis Hamilton in a Mercedes, right? This is how different the cars are. And he's, to talk about track limits, right? But he's really on the edge of the track, and Sir Lewis is nowhere near the edge of the track. And I'm talking about Sir Lewis's throttle balance footwork going on, right? Really, all the good drivers are doing that. I would even argue even drivers like Gasly are doing that, right? But really, all the championship potential drivers, they are all doing that at circuits where it is valuable to do that, like the Hungaroring. And I don't know, maybe Schumacher fan is out there. Schumacher's the guy who kind of innovated that for these modern F1 cars, but I digress. On that. But yeah, anyway, it was just some great footage. Really go look back on it. That's not far into the Grand Prix lap 10. Great footage, didn't drink it in. And yeah, that's, if you're wondering what the eye test in regards to Norris, in regards to Lando Norris, is that I mentioned in prior video. Yeah, that footage is kind of it. That's kind of why he gets talked about the way he gets talked about. Likewise, Maximilian Verstappen and his 360, and George Russell not crashing with Leclerc on the overtake. and all sorts of other moments from the ground. I mean, even George Russell's pole lap. I mean, that's a whole nother one, right? Even that, it's just a whole lot of great film from this weekend at the Hungary. We're really getting spoiled this season. I actually think we have to redefine what a classic, what a quote unquote classic Grand Prix actually is at some point soon. But anyway, alright, McLaren had their upgrades on both cars. The result is whatever you want to make of it. I'm not doing a Battle of the Fates update until Spa is over, I suppose. Look for a Spa result. Do look for a Spa result. Ricciardo, in regards to the upgrades, this weekend he is undoubtedly still adapting to the new car. Spa is going to be a good circuit anyway to be driving in an F1 car around. But he's probably still adjusting a bit to the new car. He was driving good anyway. He just had the spin with Stroll, and that kind of that's what really killed his race. But yeah, if you want to have a comparison in terms of what the eye test looks like on two different drivers in the same machinery, look at the Norris versus Ricciardo one. Right, look at how Norris drives the same spec car versus Ricciardo. We're gonna see this play out for the rest of the season, but do look for that going forward. And yeah, actually do look out for a Spa result for McLaren. I do expect them to produce something. That I expect Lando to perhaps do something there. But I do likewise expect Ricciardo to also do something very interesting at the Belgian Grand Prix. But that's a whole month away. Until then, I suppose everyone can get their vibes in. Especially Ricciardo. He needs good vibes. Anyway. Magnussen's race has been killed by the black and orange flag. I can't really assess Haas's new car in any meaningful way because Magnussen is running the car. But otherwise, his race has been killed by this black and orange flag for the broken front wing or what have you. But I would suggest at some point, whoever the rule makers are, should maybe add a black and orange stripe or something like that, some sort of flag like that. And that notes that a team has to replace a part at the next pit stop, I guess. But to force him to pit for some front wing damage, and well, the team has to take a gamble on the hards. Like, well, let's try run long, throw him on hards. That killed his race. The race was over at that point. There was no race. There was no race for Haas. They win 10th. The only reason that I'm actually talking about Magnussen at all is because, well, he was in a point scoring position. He probably might have finished in point scoring position, but well, just on account of the black and orange flag now being a more popular flag, I suppose it goes with the culture, I guess, after this Bianchi situation. But anyways, now on account of this black and orange flag being flown a lot more regularly, it didn't used to get flown this regularly, but it gets flown a lot more regularly nowadays, so Magnussen's race just got spoiled by it. So I would suggest at some point an adjustment be made. There's different types of damage on cars. I don't think that front wing damage was all that serious. It wasn't serious enough to say stop the car right now and fix that. But anyway, it's different to a rear wing situation, because if you've got a broken rear wing and it fails somehow, you've got a faulty rear wing. Actually, if the wing is broken, the driver will already know. But if you've got a faulty rear wing and it's deemed dangerous, then that's a different thing, because I don't know, rear wing could fail and well, suddenly there's no rear downforce. So ugly things could happen. But front wing, a little end plate damage that's just hanging on. I mean, you don't really need to fly a black and orange flag for that. There's maybe a different flag to fly for that, or quite frankly, F1 can make a flag for that, right? But anyway, on to Haas's car. It's another Red Bull inspired car. Look, it's got the archetypal shape. So this is just harking back to something that I said that, well, I'd like to say at the start of the season, but I suppose when I started making videos more regularly, I think it was the Mercedes silver lining, the silver lining for Mercedes video, or perhaps a video somewhere around there, where I said, yeah, the Red Bull car looks like an endpoint concept that a lot of teams are going to get to, as opposed to the Ferrari and Mercedes that are wholly unique. And well, here we go, another car. It's got kind of a Red Bull shape to it. And that's just kind of what the cars are going to look like. Now, the tracing modern is a very different thing. They've actually traced the car. These are the guys that are just developing a car and getting to the same endpoint eventually. Tracing Martin, I don't know, they threw some legalese. They threw some legalese at the FIA, and the FIA said, fuck it, we don't have time for this, and they just let them run the thing. It wasn't gonna be, if it was good, it wasn't gonna be good for all that long. But anyway, alright, Tsunoda spins on lap 35. Why am I noting this? It's noteworthy because these are what the conditions were all Grand Prix. It was essentially drizzling all Grand Prix, it's cold all Grand Prix, it's low grip all Grand Prix. And, well, the idea that some teams thought they were going to run the hard tire is just laughable to me. It's just really laughable. But otherwise, because it's such a low grip day, all the cars were being slid around in order to generate some tire temps, all of them. And well, I guess Tsunoda wasn't getting enough tire temps in. Very strange spin. I can only assume it's tire temperature issues. It wasn't running the hards at the time, but I can only assume that that is some sort of tire temperature issues. And the rear tire is not quite biting the road. But anyway, a very bizarre spin. That's a kind of low speed spin. It's not one to blame the driver for, but anyway, no one else had a spin like this, but someone was going to have a spin like that somewhere along the Grand Prix, just on account of what the conditions were. And Bottas has retired near the end of the Grand Prix. Okay. Now I'm having to consider Wolfpack talking about Ferrari playing a gambit with their engines and just throwing power at it, getting performance out of it, and worrying about reliability later. I'm having to take that a bit more seriously now. It's probably what they are doing in regards to when homologation does kick in. But otherwise, yeah, Bottas has retired near the end of the Grand Prix. It's a useful narrative. The engine homologation gambit, if you are so interested in curtailing the whole Sir Lewis Hamilton was going to fetch a win or what have you. But anyway, I don't think Mercedes were ever going to actually win Hungary. Spa onwards until Suzuka, I believe, at least. Anything could happen. But anyway, this whole Ferrari engines just keep going up in smoke. It's do I even think the Ferrari engine is unreliable, or someone is just pressing a button and making them go pop? I'm really not sure. I tell you what, if you are like a legacy viewer, then it's very bizarre to see Ferrari engines going pop. You know what I'm talking about. If you've seen Prime Ferrari with Schumacher, Todd, Braun, and it was Rory Byrne, I believe. Anyway, if you've seen Prime Ferrari, then it's very bizarre to be seeing engines going pop at Ferrari. Likewise, I suppose if you've seen the Kimi Raikkonen led Ferrari. But anyway, Suppose Ferrari are paying their paying their dues right now for those legal engines they're in. But anyway, another interesting piece of footage I want to bring to light is an onboard replay from lap 54. George Russell's overtake of Charles Leclerc. Very interesting. I've never looked at these wheel arches before. What are they? I'm calling them wheel arches. Someone else might call them wheel covers, but those wheel arches over the front tires, I've never looked at them before when a car is following another closely. And well, they were flapping. George Russell's wheel arches, they were flapping behind the Ferrari. Very interesting. I've never seen that before. I will perhaps fish for an explanation for that somewhere. But from what I do understand, one of the main issues in open wheel cars and following other cars closely is that the airflow over the front tires gets disrupted. So that, of course, reduces grip, and it's always a problem, right? So these wheel guards flapping, they actually, from my understanding, I'm not saying this is I'm not saying this is what they're actually doing from an aeronautical point of view, but from my understanding, they actually clean up the airflow over the tires, at least coming off the turbulent air, coming off of another car. They clean it up as it goes over the front tires. Very fascinating to actually see them flapping like that. I might actually go have a look at some prior Grand Prix and see what happens with some overtakes. But anyway, very interesting. I never noticed that before. Now that I've noticed it, I'm probably going to be looking at them a bit too much now. But anyway, alright, some reasons for slow pit stops. I feel like I need to put this somewhere. I suppose GP observations is a decent time to put it in. Now, there's various reasons for slow pit stops. I preferred before when there was refueling. There was at least a little more complexity to it, a little more time. Right, it was a little slower in general, the pit stops. I actually preferred that. They were more tactical. But yeah, we've just got tire changes now, and there are reasons for slow pits, because I'm seeing folks getting frustrated with slow pit stops. So number one is perhaps the wheel nuts are stuck. Alright, the cars don't run like they do in Grand Prix spec at any time during the weekend. So perhaps a wheel nut gets stuck, it gets a little hot as the wheels keep rotating round and round out on circuit. Maybe it's just a little stuck. Might be some light molding going on. Who knows? But yeah, number one reason is stuck wheel nuts. Number two is the new pit stop procedures to slow down pit stops. They're still a little buggy in some places as far as I'm concerned, because I've seen cars that are perfectly ready to go that aren't allowed to go on account of whatever the new procedures entail. I wasn't particularly interested in going through the new procedures. I just knew they would be screwy because they're not pure racing. But I suppose they had to do something because teams were chasing unicorn times with unrestricted pit stops. So I do suppose something did have to be done. But now with the procedures that are in, sometimes some buggy things happen and it looks a bit weird on the optics. I suppose they'll fix that as time goes, because sometimes, so I believe it did happen in this Hungarian Grand Prix. Sainz was held up in his pit box, and there was no car passing by. It's just held up. All the tires changed, and he's just sitting on the rear jacks for longer than he should ever need to be. Anyway, because, well, from what I understand about the new procedures is everyone has a sequential, everyone major, like the rear jack man. The rear jack man has a sequential ting, a sequential indicator somewhere on his helmet apparatus. I'm assuming here. or perhaps it's just the chief mechanic. But yeah, someone has to finish their work before the next man can actually finish their work. All right, and on account of that, because they had to slow down the pit stop somehow, because well, teams were looking for ultimate choreography, and well, the F1 doesn't really allow that sometimes. Doesn't really allow that sometimes because, well, sometimes the wheel nut is stuck. But yeah, cars were being let loose before changes had actually been done. But either way, I was not particularly interested in looking into these new procedures. I just knew they would slow down pit stops, and I knew I wouldn't like them anyway. I knew I wouldn't like them because they weren't pure. If you're gonna just do tire stops, then just let them be unrestricted, and let F1 be F1 anyway. And number 3, last reason for slow pit stops is sometimes the wheel nut is threaded. It's just a threaded wheel nut. Like I'm sure Verstappen's right rear was after that pit stop on that bit. I'm pretty sure. I'm not gonna say on guard, I'm gonna blaspheme or something, but I'm pretty sure that wheel nut was threaded, and I'm pretty sure perhaps even the pit wall knew about it and they didn't want to pit him again because it might have been problematic getting that tire off. Because boy, that thing sparked up on TV. Is it the brother on that? Is it the brother on that one? I think I forget his name. Is it Callum? Anyway, I forget the brother's name, but it's the brother with the dreads and the Red Bull. I think he's on that corner of the car, and I think the nuts didn't get lined up just right. But Red Bull, because they're a fucking race team, right? They said, okay, look, if that happens, okay, just jam the thing on because we need the pit stop time. We'll deal with it after. And he jammed the thing on and sparked up. It was crazy. That was good film. That's why I say this weekend produced a whole lot of great film. But yeah, if they had to bring Verstappen in again, that corner probably would have been slow getting off. Who knows? It might have been a Bottas Monaco situation not going to come off. We might have to take it to factory to get it off. But anyway, that's reason number 3 that you might see slow pit stops. And there's other reasons you could throw up. I don't know, maybe someone bounced the tire, or there's an incident in pit row or what have you. Anything could happen. But that aside, these are the main things. These are the general things that you'll see. And then closing, as F1 heads into the summer break. Now it's winter break for me. But as F1 heads into the summer break, or what is the summer break? Maybe people have experienced the summer break. They just don't quite know what makes it a summer break. Maybe it's someone's first summer break. They're watching their first F1 season or what have you. And the summer break is where teams are mandated to take 2 weeks away from the general operations, right? So somewhere over this month, everyone who works at a team has to take 2 weeks away. Find a time, 2-week vacay, take the family to I don't know, Cancun or something, go wherever, go Ibiza, take the family somewhere just for 2 weeks, get away from the factory, and yeah, we'll have you on record as you weren't here for 2 weeks. You were at home, as far as we were concerned, doing your own thing for 2 weeks. But they only have to do that for 2 weeks out of the month. Okay, out of the 4 weeks that F1 takes off, they only have to do that for 2 weeks. So it's not like work is going to stop for the teams for this whole break. It's not quite like that. Teams are just going to be a little bit smarter about, how they pipeline their work and when people take their vacay. Everything is gamed in F1. Like, and nothing is a run to the spirit of the regulations, even the summer break. But yeah, this is why you're still seeing all sorts of news pop up. This summer break, y'all supposed to be on break, right? But still all sorts of hijinks going on. Some really ridiculous hijinks, like right away to start the summer break, was like crazy. But anyway, in case you're wondering what the summer break is and all of that, that's what the summer break is. So Newey, somewhere along the line, he got to take 2 weeks away from Red Bull. Toto, somewhere along the line, you got to take 2 weeks away from Mercedes. Bernardo, somewhere along the line, you got to take 2 weeks away from Ferrari. Whew, he might be relieved. Like, goddamn, after that Grand Prix, he might be relieved. He might have already taken his breath. Like, get me out of here. I gotta go speak to some family member. Just get me the heck out of here, just for 2 weeks. But no, this couldn't have come any sooner for Bernardo. But anyway, that's the GP observations. Yeah, that's the vid. Peace.
Hell breezy. Let me show you how to keep the dice rolling when you're doing that thing over there, homie. Hey, let's go! Cause I'm feeling like I'm running and I'm feeling like I gotta get away. Better know that I don't and I won't ever stop. Cause you know I gotta win every day. Go! See, you really wanna pop me. Go! Just know that you will never flop me. And I know that I gotta be a little cocky. Go! You ain't never gonna stop me. Every time I come a nigga gotta set it, then I gotta go and then I gotta get it, then I gotta blow and then I gotta shut it. Any little thing a nigga think that he be doing, cause it doesn't matter, cause I'm gonna dead it. Then I'm gonna murder everything and anything about it. Boom, about a bing. I gotta do a lot of things to make it clearer to a couple niggas that I always win and then I gotta get it again and again and again. And I be doing it to death and now I move a little foul. Nigga better call a rap and everybody know my style. Niggas know that I'm the best when it comes to doing this and I be banging on my chest and I bang in the east and I banging in the west and I come to give you more and I will never give you less. You will hear it in the street and you can read it in the press. Do you really wanna know what's next? Let's go. See the way we on it and we all up in the race and you know we gotta go now try to keep up with the pace and we struggling and hustling and sell it and get it and we always gotta do it, take it to another place, gotta taste it and I gotta grab it and I gotta cut all through this traffic just to be at the top of the dome, but I know I gotta have it.